Can we give Brendan Brown a huge round? Powerful testimony. And one more time, can we thank Terry Chris for pouring out his life? I'm emotionally unstable right now. And I think the passion of the local church, especially ours, is to make sure people know that there's hope for things that we have given up on, especially with this concept of peace. And we thought it would be incredible to get three individuals that we love dearly. This is Katie Termini, to my right. Her and my husband John are amazing team, builders at our church here in New York City. Chad Beach, in the middle, pastor of LA Church, Los Angeles, California, owner of one of the greatest smiles of all time. And on the end of this couch is Joel Timothy Houston. And we just wanted to talk about, for a moment, peace in the promise. And I think what we see a lot in places like New York City, I'm sure it's similar everywhere, if people don't know the promises, it can be really hard to understand what you're entitled to as a Christian. And we have people that don't know that sometimes as a Christian, on the journey to peace, things can look kind of messy. And you have to hold on to promises, because we've actually sold people a bit of a raw deal when we think you come to Jesus, everything gets better. Has anybody ever had that experience where everything in your life magically got better the moment you got saved? Where are you? Show us your wings and fly around. The truth is, sometimes God is deconstructing things, and things can almost seem messier. You could almost think you're going crazy, but in fact, God's building something new in you. And I think, Katie, your brilliance, first of all, just tell people a little bit about what you do for a living.
I'm a forensic neuropsychologist.
Say it again, it just sounds cool.
Forensic neuropsychologist. Other forensic neuropsychologists.
There's multiple in this room.
I do court-ordered evaluations for inmates who suffer from some sort of mental illness or neurological disorder, and sort of help them along in the court process and make sure they're given the appropriate disposition based on whatever they might be suffering from.
Yeah. What did you do today, Chad? We always just get a kick out of this because you're so, obviously, if you were more beautiful, God could use you. But you sit across from people who have been through a lot, and you're pretty much making the decision on whether they're certifiably insane or just heavy things, and you carry it so well. And just, can you fill us in on some of the medical side of things? And I know, by the way, thank you for all you've done for our church here in New York City. We've gone right after this and tried to really help people understand there is no taboo in the local church. If you suffer from mental illness, if you suffer from things where you look good on the outside but you're dying on the inside, that's what church is for. Bring it out, get help, get counseling, get medicine, get help. And Katie's been instrumental in that, providing free care for many people. And tell us some of the stats behind what it looks like right now, because I know Terry mentioned it, but I don't think we really have a grasp on how much this is suffocating our people, our cities.
In our city alone, in New York City, 1 in 5 people are suffering from a mental illness, and that includes depression and anxiety. And that statistic applies to people who have actually sought out treatment. So that number, that's probably about half, actually, if you think about the people who are suffering in silence and not actually asking for help. So there's no way this doesn't touch everyone in this room, whether it's a family, friend, loved one, anyone. From my perspective professionally, our jail and prison system are the largest providers of mental health in our country. So about half of the prison population is getting some sort of mental health treatment.
Wow. What would you say is like a red flag or something that concerns you? You mentioned it to me before when it comes to, I guess people getting help. What do you see that you're passionate about changing as well?
I think, especially in a church setting, the biggest stumbling block that we face is that people are so hesitant to get help or raise their hand for help because they feel like, or have been told or made to feel like, it's a lack of faith. and that this is something they should pray away, that it's a sign that they're not praying enough or that God's not listening to them. Unfortunately, or fortunately, God doesn't always answer our prayers the way we want him to. So a lot of times people pray and they think they're going to wake up and miraculously be completely healed, which happens, of course. But more often, the answer to that prayer comes in the form of a doctor or a medication or a therapist. And so just because that answer doesn't look how you want it to, doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean he's not listening to you.
Katie, she's also a preacher. Before we move past this, if somebody was in here and they feel like there's no hope for them because we live in a city where people learn how to acclimate to their dysfunction, rather than pray that God can change your climate, you just get used to being sick, and you've known it for so long, you think that's now you. If someone in here right now, they're like, well, I don't know if I can change. I think I've been this way for so long. What would you tell them?
I don't think suffering should ever be the norm. So I would say don't be content in your suffering. It's always okay to ask for help. That's what churches are here for. That's what doctors are here for. So it's okay to ask for help.
Thank you. Can we give Katie a hand? I'm going to skip over Chad for a moment. Joe Houston, you're my favorite songwriter of all time. You are such a blessing to our church. Little do people know, on your off time, you might be one of the greatest church builders I've ever known. And you're a blessing to so many, and you are loved. Thank you for doing what you've done for so long, for pioneering new ways for people to write songs, for being more daring when most people would be content just to have a model that works and always push the boundaries, and you are loved, and you're awesome, and you're loved. You're my best friend. What's it been like being your best friend? We know that's awesome. What's it been like trying to hold on to these promises that you've known because you've grown up in the house? Your mom and dad, they work in the church industry. What's it been like trying to hold on to some of this stuff, because your journey with finding your peace, many people might not know from a different view that it hasn't always been easy for you. And you look at somebody like you, cheat a lot, do a lot. People know who you are, but God has used you already. What's it been like for you finding peace?
Well, it's really tough to talk after some of these other things, but all I know is this: if we're talking about peace and the promise, I know that you can only understand that if you understand the two bits went before, the process and whatever else was a part of it. And for me, I think a lot of the struggles I have are internal, and it's struggling with the dichotomy of what it means to be a human being, and also the spiritual journey we have, and that just desire, knowing God and wanting to see God do what He's called us to do, and that I believe the church is called to do in the world around and about us. And you don't have to look around too far. There's everywhere there seems to be this conflict, tension, and I think I've come to realize that that's right where the beauty is in that place where the tension is, and you saw it, Brendan so beautifully illustrated it with the needle and the nail, that intersection at the cross, that place where we die, where Jesus died for us. And I think about scripture, what it means to take up a cross daily, to follow Him, and I think it's okay to live in that tension. And I think for me, I probably, I don't know how to say this in the short amount of time we have, but that's something that I feel like I'm wrestling with daily. Is what does that look like physically and spiritually? And I think there's those two sides to it that are reconciled in who Jesus was, spirit and flesh. And I think often the tensions that we have, I like to think in metaphors. So music, like take music for example. You know, the real beauty in music and writing a song is tension and release. And I think one of the greatest songs ever is that song that Leonard Cohen wrote, you know, the Hallelujah song. I heard there was a secret chord that David played, please the Lord. You don't care for music, do you? But it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing Hallelujah. And I just think, you know, that's our praise. There's this process where, you know, each and every single day, I think we walk into this tension, and there are these minor falls, and so often I think, especially in ministry, and when you know, trying to do everything right, and we strive and we push and we work so hard, sometimes it feels like we just got to live in this major lift land. But if all our songs were just major lift, they'd get really dull really fast, and they wouldn't resonate with anybody. And in the same breath, if all our songs were just morbid, morose, none of these things, it's like there's no beauty in them. It doesn't work. You have to have both. And so I think that's the wrestle for me, is what does that look like on the daily? What does that look like following God? How do I tread that line where I'm in that place? Because to me, that's where all the best things come out of. It's where all the most beautiful things tend to flow. And I have, you know, artist friends here, and, you know, guys I talk to daily, this guys we live with, and you find out so many people live in this wrestle and don't know how to do it because they feel like they have to be one way or the other way, especially as Christians. And we so often try and separate the world and our spirituality, and we so often try and separate our flesh from our spirituality. And what I love about what Katie said, what I love about what Terry said, what I love about what Brandon said, is that you've got to be practical. You've got to walk this out. As much as we've got to trust God, it says be steadfast in our mind. That's something that we control, is our mind. But it says in this trust in God, that's the dependency, that heart thing that's beyond you. It's both. I love that, you know, when Jesus walked on water into the storm and the disciples were freaking out in the boat, like he could have flown, he could have just appeared. But I love that Jesus, he walked. And what he was doing was supernatural. But it was still natural. He was moving his feet. He could have done this, but no, Jesus knew, God knew. That's why we have Jesus. That everything we do, every spiritual end for us, it involves a physical aspect as well. And I think oftentimes we get that confused and we think that faith is something that we control. No, faith is something that I believe truly comes from God. It's his grace that allows us to become dependent on it. That's how that thing gets renewed in us. And that involves sometimes, as Terry said, leaning into it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not on your understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him. He'll make the path straight. And that's the fight I have every single day. Trying to get better.
Who are struggling with these, and they are an artist, creative mind. What would you tell them if you were to meet with them and someone just said, I got this tension, I'm struggling? What would you tell somebody on a practical level that works for you to keep your eyes where they need to be?
Well, I would say get help. Definitely, to be open about it.
That might be the overriding point of our thing. Everybody's hurting. Get help.
No, like I said, I think it's a whole lot of things. Like for me, you know, I went and saw somebody when I was just in a very confused place, and I think I was just allowing all these tensions in my life. If you imagine that everything in your life is an instrument, like so your marriage, there's a tune to that. If you have a family, if it's your ministry, if it's your calling, because sometimes our ministry and our calling don't feel like they're exactly the same thing. Like what we're doing doesn't feel like what we're called to do, and that's still part of it. So this often, sometimes, these discords start happening. It could be relationships with friends. It could be this feeling, and that tension, those two notes kind of not working together. Those tensions are things that I think rattle us, and we get really good in church because we turn up on Sunday, and especially when you do what I do, we just get to sing our way through it with a whole bunch of people all the time. But then when you go back to your wherever you find yourself, you're like, why is this? What's all this discord that's going on in my life? And I think what really helped me is God sometimes, let's call it, if you want to call it depression, or call it whatever, when that cloud comes, it forces us to look inward, and that's dangerous in one respect. It's also super healthy for God needs us to do, because he wants us to go, hang on, I can't hear the noise, I've lost perspective, I don't know what's going on, I've lost my passion, I've lost all these different things, and all of a sudden you go, you know what it is? It's because there's this discord here and there's this discord here, and I can actually practically fix these things by recognizing and realizing, okay, I feel like I'm failing in this area. Why do I think I'm failing in this area? And approaching it one by one. And I started with a story guy, and he was amazing. He said to me a couple of things, and one of the things he said to me personally, because I think he read my book, which I don't know physically because I haven't read the book anyway. He read my, it's a metaphor. He told me that I wasn't crazy, and that was really, really helpful for me. Because the one thing I do know about being crazy is that if you're crazy, you probably don't know you are. So I wasn't sure. And awareness is a big one for me. It's like I want to know. Like I just want to know. If I have something on my face, I need to know. Like if I have bad breath, I need to know. It's better to know. And it's not because you have to address it. But he said to me this other thing. He goes, for you, because you're dancing with your shadow. And I was like, okay, and you know, we live this life where we're kind of constantly projecting, and often it's our insecurities that we project from because it becomes a defense mechanism. And I realized that I'm in this place where I'm just trying to figure out this other side of who I am, and I'm struggling with that tension every single day. And he goes, but that's what God's called you to do. It's a battle that is unique to you, and you have to fight your way out of this. You know, in essence, like Jacob. You have to fight this thing and understand that what's going to help you is metaphor, music, song, story. And so I went to work on it. I just written songs that we'll probably never sing, but they just have been something that God gave. I little did know when I started writing songs that it was going to be a weapon that God was going to give me in seasons down the road, not for everybody else, but for my relationship with God. And that's the goodness of God, and to me that's where the promise is in the process. You've got to walk that thing out, and we get so focused and occupied on the other side because we believe that's where the promise is, but the promise, he walked out to us, and he walked out physically and spiritually, and he met us, and it wasn't our faith that got us to him, even though we have to step out of the boat sometimes. It was the fact that he's good enough that when we fall, he catches us, and we end up right where we had Jacob when he wrestled the angel, even though he dislocated his hip. I just think about that picture of when you wrestle someone, it's about the most intimate thing you could, well, there's a couple of things. You can call it wrestles too. But there is, when it comes to God, God wants intimacy with us. Think of it like this. In that tension, think of it, a wrestle, a tension, that conflict. You know, Jacob is desperate. He wants a new name. He wants the promise. And he wrestles with God, with the angel, and he's right there. He's as close as he can be. And same with Peter, in his moment of just utter desperation, he ended up with his face in the bosom of Jesus. And I use the word bosom, but it just came out. But yes. That's right where God wants us to be. And so don't be afraid just to fall in hard, and let God's grace remind you of how faithful he is.
Yeah.
And lastly, sorry, no, but this is the best of this. I love this. When they got back in the boat, Peter and Jesus, there's no more mention of Peter. It just says that all the others in the boat bowed down and worshipped Jesus, saying, surely he is the Son of God. And I think there's something about us when we put ourselves out there, when we find ourselves back dependent on who Jesus is, and we're willing to get back into that boat for the sake of others, because that's what the other side is ultimately about. That's where the promise is. Other people get the revelation. And we're still figuring out. That's the goodness of God. That's the promise in the process.
Thank you for being honest, for being you. You're amazing. And that's some profound, insight. I think, let me ask you this before I go to Chad. When you and I rode Oceans, did you think that it would do what it is now? It surprised me. Did it surprise you? When we were writing that, you were like, and I was like, it's never failed you. And you were like, okay, Chad. Many of our church, would know who you are. Your amazing wife, Louise, here, your incredible family, pastor an awesome church in the heart of Los Angeles. You are world-renowned for your ridiculous friendship, your contagious joy. You are faithful, you're kind. You've somehow managed to be in a city like LA and remain kind. That's a miracle. Your journey of being, peaceful in the storm. To me, one of the things I love about you so much is that you're not a conditional peace guy. A lot of people need the perfect conditions. And you're the opposite. You've been hit with some storms that you probably didn't predict. And yet, your smile and your passion to still help people and keep your head up, it is a gift. And I think about this subject, I don't know if everybody would know some of the story about your daughter years ago when you guys got that diagnosis. And I remember talking to you on the phone, and I remember thinking, why am I more emotionally distraught and devastated than the guy who's giving me the news? You called me to pray, and I think you ended up counseling me. That's your gift. But can you just tell us a little bit about that journey and how you've learned to stay with this explosive, ridiculous joy through some serious stuff?
Well, first of all, I hope that I can answer it, but I am so on the verge of an ugly cry right now. Your answer and Terry and Brennan were just so unbelievable. Yeah. I wish Pastor Brian would have had a slide of the tears. I want the ugly
cry slide.
I got an ugly cry coming on me right now. But I heard Judah say it years ago. He said, life has this ability of touching all of us. And none of us are above being touched by life. And what's interesting about our story is, like what Joel's saying, is you face things in life that don't go away. So it was a challenge when we got the diagnosis. It's a challenge today. And I wasn't ready for that. I thought, if I can just get over the hurdle of the diagnosis, then if I could pull through my faith, 6 years later into the journey, I'm still having to smile. I'm still having to declare God's word. I'm still having to choose joy and to choose positivity. So what's amazing for me, I always think about Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel gets thrown in the lion's den. But right before that happens, when he knew that the decree had been signed by the king, it says in verse 10, as was his custom, he opened up his window, and 3 times that day he prayed. And I always think, I didn't realize it for years, all my Bible study, all my time in church, all my time preaching was preparing me for my lion's den. I didn't realize, because I was preaching on faith and I was preaching on what God could do, and I was preaching to a married couple and a parent, but I wasn't a married couple yet. I wasn't a parent yet. So when I got into the lion's den, I thought, oh my gosh, I know what to do. My habits have prepared me to face what I'm facing. And so I said, I'm going to do what I do every day. I'm going to do my custom. And I'm going to worship, and I'm going to serve, and I'm going to love, and I'm going to give, and I'm going to tell the devil, no, not today, not tomorrow, not ever again. But it wasn't, I think it's so important that we handle the seasons that aren't in crisis, because you never know when that day's going to come. And hopefully there's a preparedness that just in case life touches you, I got a word to stand on. I got a promise to stand on. I've got some friends to call. Come on, I got some people to reach out to. I'm not scrambling. I've got a savings account just in case I get a flat tire. And so New York is a very special place to me. It's a very significant city to me because when my daughter was diagnosed, you put up a photo of her and the doctors were testing her brain that, for whatever reason, never formed. And it was a photo of, I think you were in the Salvation Army Theater, and the whole church is extending their hands praying. And that moved me. It was in New York where Joe Termini said, I'm going to go get a tattoo for your daughter. And I'm going to get a G in my arm. And every time I look at that G, it's going to remind me to pray for your daughter, Georgia. I said, shoot, if you get a G tat, I'll get a G tat. And so New York is symbolic to me of when the day of the storm hits, hopefully you have a preparedness that you yourself can have a practice, but also you have a community of people. The church is going to rally and the church is going to pray and believe. And you're not going to be a family on your own trying to sort this thing. So I'm very thankful to you and very thankful to Hillsong.
Give somebody, it could be like a specialized prophetic word, but what's your favorite scripture? And maybe just speaking into somebody's life who might be on the first stage of a really tough diagnosis, a storm that they were not prepared for, and they're going to leave here dedicated and say, what's God's word for them? Your favorite scripture?
Well, I thought Brandon did such a great job of referring to Abraham. And I think that the Bible and God allows us to have hope against hope. Hope is so audacious. Hope has this attitude that says, even though my circumstance says I shouldn't be hopeful, because I have God, I am hopeful. And so Abraham looked at his situation and said, even though it does not look hopeful for me, I still am going to rise up and have hope, because God is not a man that he would lie. God is not a man that he would change his mind. We believe that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so I want to encourage anybody, maybe your situation looks so bleak and so terrible and the diagnosis is what it is. Maybe you are facing depression or anxiety. I want to say, let's be a church that is filled with hope. Let's be people of hope, that we have hope in a good God, that Jesus is with us, he is for us, and he can do what only God can do. Amen to that? That's all I want to say.
Can we give all three of these